Okay, welcome to our webinar today. So today we'll be discussing Google Arts and Culture. So again, through this webinar series, we'll look at a number of either Google resources that are outside of your normal realm of docs, slides, sheets, some of those sites that are really an extension of the Google Suite, or we'll look at some different and unique ways that you can use the core apps of Google G Suite. So for those who don't know me, I'm Mary Kovach from Erie One BOCES Winnierick, and I'm a former library media specialist. I've been a technology integration coordinator at BOCES for about 13 years now. Actually, a little bit more or less, depending on how you look at it. Took a little time off when my son was born. He's 8 years old now. What is Google Arts and Culture? So this was formerly called Google Cultural Institute. So if you've heard of Google Cultural Institute before, the site itself, not the organization, it's very similar. So what it does is it brings worldwide museums, landmarks, artifacts, different thematic media collections right to your web browser, and also through apps that you can download for mobile devices. So for iOS devices and Android devices. So again, the organization that started this a number of years ago was the Google Cultural Institute. So the site used to be just google.com/cultural institute. And this was the Google sort of ancillary group that cultivates different works of art. So again, it says it's a group for the culturally curious. Also, they have many partner cultural institutions through Google. So just as Google a number of years ago tried to digitize all of the published public domain books that were in the world, they have also partnered with a number of cultural institutions to bring those collections, regardless of where they are in the world, right to you through your web browser. So it kind of gives some background here about the organization that is responsible for arts and culture. So again, this is kind of their lab in Paris for the Cultural Institute. Okay, so just kind of the background of Google Arts and Culture. So the site itself, if I click on Arts and Culture, this is where users can actually go in and experience any of these cultural experiences. So as you can see from my slide here, there are a number of artifacts that are in museums that you can actually really zoom into, some nice high-res pictures, some interactives that you can use as well, 360-degree tours or videos as well. So it has a number of works of art in a variety of mediums from different cultures. And also, as I mentioned, some what they call virtual tours of different museums or culturally significant places from around the world. Okay, so just some example items from the Cultural Institute. So you can see here, the first one I mentioned is the painting Fall of the Rebel Angels. So it might be something where for a particular painting or work of art, it gives some more in-depth information as opposed to, let's say, just having the painting digitized. Sometimes they have what are called stories about the paintings. So in a sense, it's as if you were at the museum itself and you were being led by a docent of that museum. Okay, so you can see that this painting here, it gives some background information by Bruegel the Elder in 1562. So again, this is what they call a story. You might notice here there's an icon that looks like a book. So I can kind of just scroll through or click on the arrow side to side to learn more about that painting. Okay, so it talks about the different parts of the painting. And as it's describing them, in the different sort of slides of the story, it zooms in on part of that picture. But I can also control the zooming in and out as well. And here I'm just going from sort of slide to slide. And you can see that in a lot of these, they're very high resolution pictures. It might be hard to tell depending on how well the video is streaming for you right now, but it really does kind of get into those fine details of paintings and other artistic mediums. Okay, and actually this one also has a VR video, virtual reality video, that is on YouTube, and they bring these in as well.
1962 by Peter Bruegel the Elder is held at the Royal Museums of Fine Arts of Belgium. This piece highlights the first confrontation between good and evil.
And then what's happening is, you may have noticed that the picture kind of turned around. This is actually me using my cursor. I'm clicking and dragging to change my perspective. So I can actually look in and around the museum as well. It's sort of a 360 video. And we'll talk about this a little bit later too, but if you actually have a virtual reality type device, such as Google Cardboard, you can actually, instead of clicking and dragging, you can put your device into the virtual reality headset or Google Cardboard, so to speak, and kind of walk around as if you are in the museum itself. Okay, so that's one example item. And as I mentioned, you have some different museum tours. So Google Arts and Culture has some different partners, museums from around the country and world. So for example, I can go into the US National Archives, let's say. And I can either look at individual items or stories. So kind of the story that I mentioned is where you see this little book icon. And it explains different primary sources or different works of art in the context of different historical periods, different art movements, whatever might be appropriate. So there's definitely a lot of tie-in here as well. Different scientific movements, significant discoveries. So there's definitely a lot of tie-in with science, social studies, as well as the arts. Whenever you see this little yellow orangish person icon for anything, it means it's actually going to be a 360-degree sort of a virtual tour that you can either turn around or move in different directions. So if I click on, for example, this little person icon. Okay, so here I'm in the National Archives. So I can either click and drag to change my perspective of where I'm looking. If I want to look up, I can click and drag up. Or I can click, if I kind of mouse over a doorway, I might see a forward arrow. So then I can click to go forward and then go into a different part of the museum. So again, some great virtual field trips for students as well. So similarly, they have the same kind of thing for world wonders. So for example, for the Taj Mahal. So this is one of their topics. Okay, so they have a story. And then as I scroll down, you'll see that some of these have that little person icon, that little yellow person, orange person, that I can click on and change my perspective. If I mouse around and I see a forward or backward arrow, I can go in that direction. And I can also zoom in and out using my mouse or my trackpad to see around the grounds. And just amazing how this architecture has stood the test of time. I recently saw something that they're trying to make the Leaning Tower of Pisa a little more stable, I guess. but really is pretty amazing what you can see and what you can learn about through these resources. Okay, so just some example items. We will also talk about how you can find these different kinds of items in Google Arts and Culture. Okay, so the first way that you can find these items is you can go to the Explore tab. So you can either, from the very top of the page, once you're in Google Arts and Culture, you can click on Explore at the top, or you can click on this little, what I call a sandwich icon on the left-hand side. Okay, so again, everything seems today to have sort of a food nickname in terms of website navigation. These three lines often are referred to as the sandwich. And you can access Explore from there as well. And so once you're in there, you can choose to explore either by particular famous artists, by various mediums, art movements, historical events. You can search by historical figure or by places. Another nice feature is you can search for nearby exhibits. So if you are allowing location services on your device, then you can actually click there and it's going to find museums that are partners that are close to you so that you can visit in person or you can learn more about them before you go there. Okay, so if I go back to artsandculture.google.com, you can see on the home page here, it gives me just some spotlight items. So every day it's going to have some different items or on a rotating basis, depending on what their themes are. Okay, so kind of one that I liked today was this daily inspiration, which is Pablo Picasso. Painting with light is something that I find really interesting lately. Again, it's a work of art that only lasts milliseconds, but if it's something that can be captured with the camera, really is something, you know, amazing. So this has obviously a lot of shirtless Picasso, but then you can see some of his works of art that he has done with light and the photography that was involved in that as well. Okay, so if you wanted to explore something specific, certainly you could click on the magnifying glass that is in the upper right corner. If I click on Explore, again, either from the top navigation or on the left, if I click my sandwich, I can explore from here as well. I can click on specific collections or themes. And also we'll talk about what they call experiments, things that are up and coming within Google Cultural Institute and Arts and Culture. Okay, so then you have, you can search by, as I mentioned, various artists, mediums, art movements, historical events, historical figures, or places. So you can either access those on the left-hand side, or if I click Explore at the top, you can see that I have some items that are highlighted, some different categories. So again, if I click on artists, they have some popular ones suggested. I can click on A to Z to look at the artists alphabetically. Click on the different letters to go to the artists with those names. Or by time period. So if I click on time, I can say I'm looking for artists within, let's say, this time frame. So I can click on my timeline to choose my different time frames. Okay, so I'm going to go back to Explore at the top, and I can search by any of these topics. So again, historical events. Great primary sources, tie-ins for social studies. And again, you can filter by time. You can filter historical events alphabetically as well. Historical figures. Okay, and again, I could look at these, and then if I scroll, it's just going to keep loading more of those. So Henry VIII, let's say And then there are various stories, various paintings or artifacts that we could look at for Henry VIII. Okay, and again, different art movements. So for the art classroom, and even tie-ins with music, different art forms, dance. A lot of times you'll have those tie-ins too. Like one of the items from today is about Alvin Ailey, his dance troupe, and really looking at the different connections that he made with other artists of the time, especially composers, musicians. But again, here I can look at different art movements. Okay. And if I click on nearby, either at the top or from the side, you can see that it's using my location to bring up Albright Knox, Niagara Historical Society, Strong Museum, or George Eastman House, bringing up some Canadian exhibits and museums as well, since geographically it's close to us. So it's going by the number of miles from my house. So I could click on Strong here. And actually, you can see that I can kind of take a walk inside the Strong Museum. So if you wanted to take a look inside some of these museums before you go, you can certainly do that. I know this is the kind of museum where kids actually want to have some hands-on. I've brought my son there before. They have their little play Wegmans, different activities always going on for kids. But still, it kind of gives you then an idea of what is there. Okay, so again, when I go to explore, or when I click on my sandwich icon in the upper left, I can search by collections, themes, or experiments. Okay, so I'm going to click on my Google Arts and Culture to get back to the home page. So again, if I click on my sandwich, I have different collections. So the collections really are some partner organizations. So you can see we have the J. Paul Getty Museum, Musée d'Orsay in Paris, the MoMA. So different museums, cultural institutions from around the world, not just the United States, that you can visit online. So again, National Gallery of Modern Art, India, in New Delhi. So you're going to have museums, and again, for any of these cultural partners, they usually have some of the virtual tours as well, with the little person. If you're in India, it tells you how to get there. So it has some information to help you experience some place that may be far away that you can't get to, or to kind of give you some background before you visit a particular cultural institution. So again, when it says collections, those are different museum partners, and you can look at some different museum exhibits a lot of times too. Okay, the item under collections is themes. So this is a variety of media for people, places, events, ideas tied around one particular theme, sometimes a timely theme, sometimes just one that they are interested in. Okay, so again, some themes. For example, Meet Vermeer. Something that I know a number of years ago there was the Vermeer movie, but something that's just of interest. And again, it's in collaboration with these different cultural partners. Okay. But focusing on bringing resources from a number of different museums around the world and bringing them together into one theme. So it's kind of taking items from various collections and making their own virtual collections. Okay, so some different themes that they have. For example, a recent one is the charities of the Prince of Wales. So charities of Prince Charles being a patron of the arts and an artist himself, kind of giving some background into him and some of the initiatives he's taken to promote the arts. Okay, so again, take a walk around his residence there and some other places, and kind of give some background information around the particular theme of Prince Charles and his work in the arts. Okay, now the experiments, these aren't something that are necessarily a big part yet of Google Arts and Culture, but some things that are sort of either public art installations, digital art installations that are coming down the pipeline for others to experience. So for example, one of their digital experiments, art initiatives, is Draw to Art. So what this does, I won't play the whole video here, but what it does is, I'll kind of turn that down a little, is it allows the users who are from actually various museums that they've put it in, for example, in Paris, to do their own doodles, and then the artificial intelligence matches their doodles to some works of art that they may want to look at. So it's a way of searching for art by your own doodles. So again, this is something that's only in certain museums right now, but something that is one of their experiments that perhaps they'll bring out to the larger Google Arts and Culture in the future. Okay, and again, some might be about, for example, some public art exhibits. So this one is Please Feed the Lions. So it's making something that was really developed in Trafalgar Square many years ago into something that's more interactive and taking on the characteristics of the lions that perhaps the viewers would like to see. So it's sort of crowdsourcing the emotion that you want the exhibit to have. So depending on words that people put in, it's going to create a different art exhibit and some different, let's say, artificial intelligence poetry that's related to it. So again, these are some Google Cultural Institute experiments that are things that are coming down the pipeline. Okay, so I mentioned before, you can look at historical events, art movements, artists, historical figures, either alphabetically or by using a timeline. So this might be something that's very useful if you're studying a certain time period, either in arts or science or social studies, in literature. It might be very useful to kind of take a look to build student background knowledge at other things that were happening during that time frame. Okay, so again, we go back to arts and culture. Okay, so if I click on my sandwich menu and I go to historical events, by default, it's going to be on all. Bring up, let's say, popular items or larger collections. And again, if I keep scrolling, it's going to keep loading more. Or I can click on time, click on a particular era or on a spot on the timeline itself. And again, I could also search historical events, A to Z, or I could click on the magnifying glass in the upper right, and then I could search from here as well. Okay, so you can do something very similar if you click on the tabs for the art movements, artists, or historical figures. Okay, something else that I think is really interesting is if you're going into the category for artistic mediums and you go to a particular medium. So for example, glass. you can actually search by not only popularity or time period, but you can search by color as well. So for example, if we're looking at the history of glass or the science behind what makes glass, what makes different colored glass, I could click on mediums and I can choose glass. And then if I scroll down, you can see that I can choose how I want to organize those items. So if I click on the little flame here, that's by popularity. So glass items by popularity. If I click on time, again, this brings me back to my timeline that I can click on to go to various time frames. And this is a lovely time in glasswork. Or if I click on the color palette, and let's say I'm looking at green glass, and let's say the science behind green glass, when it has been popular throughout history, I could click here, and I can click on an item to learn more about that item. Okay, so I'm just going to go back here. And so it will bring me out to that item in whatever collection it's in. So you can see here's a spa cup from 1850. So the idea here is it gives you some background information made from uranium glass. So again, different elements are going to, that are added to silicon are going to create some different colors. So this kind of allows you then to search for those artistic items by the color. Okay, and again, if I go to mediums, click on my sandwich, and click on mediums, here's where now I can click on popular ones, or I can click on A to Z, and if I wanted to find glass, I'm going to click on the edge if I need to go forward to get to G, and then I can see that glass is right here. Okay, so I think those are some nice features that are added in as well for different works of art or different artistic mediums. Okay, and as you've seen, we have a number of interactive exhibits. One that we haven't really taken a look at yet, we have looked at some virtual tours and what are called stories. So again, this is an example of a story with some artifacts. So it gives some images, might be some virtual tours, and also some background information. So a lot of times it might just be some text, sometimes really something where you're zooming in and similar to what maybe a docent would do at a museum. And for any of the images, not sure if I mentioned this explicitly, but for any of the items that are images, I can click on the image and then I can scroll in to zoom in to see the details. So depending on the item and the resolution of the picture, sometimes you can find some pretty interesting things in some of the paintings. You could look for signs of dating in these to say what time period this was from. See how well something was restored, possibly. So what we haven't looked at are what are called 360-degree videos. A little bit through the Fall of the Rebel Angels, I guess we saw that. But whenever you see this icon, it's an eyeball that has two little arrows around it for any of the collections, any of the themes or stories. This is actually going to be a 360-degree video. Okay, so I can see that this is a video, it's on YouTube. But again, I can click and drag to see from different perspectives. So if I want to see the musician's perspective, I can do that. If I want to see an audience perspective, I can do that as well. Now again, since I'm on my computer, on my laptop, I'm actually clicking and dragging. But if you view this on a mobile device or through a VR device, you can actually kind of just turn your head around, turn your body around, to change your perspective. So again, looking at different ways to experience, let's say, a concert or a museum tour. So some different ways that you can experience those through 360-degree videos. Okay, so now we're going to talk about some other things that you can do with Google Cultural Institute. So far, we've been looking at ways that you can browse and explore the resources that are there. So now we're going to look at ways that you can actually start to build your own collections by first saving what are called favorites. Okay, and so this is where if you aren't already signed in, you want to sign in to Google Cultural Institute. So again, if you're already in Google Chrome and you're signed into your Google account already, chances are it will automatically sign you in. If it doesn't, you're going to see sign in at the top of your page. Okay, so again, I'm either going to see my profile icon, so I choose my account here, my M. Kovach. If you aren't already signed in, you're going to see a sign in button, and it's going to ask you to sign in with your Google account. And what that will do is it will allow you then to save your favorites for later. And as I mentioned, also create your own personal galleries that you could share with others. Okay, so the first step in doing this after you sign in is find items that you think are significant, ones you might want to come back to or ones you might want to share with someone later on. And you're going to click the heart icon. It also has an icon to copy a link for that particular page. So when you copy the link, you can then paste it into an email, let's say, or again, if you're on a mobile device, share it with somebody through a message. There's also a share icon that allows you to share that page either on a social media outlet or right directly to Google Classroom if you use Google Classroom. Okay, so let's say I'm going to click on this story here. Murano Glass. Okay, and let's say that this is something that I want to save for later, or that I want to add to a gallery that I will create later. I'm just going to click on the heart. And now, instead of just being an outline of a heart, it's actually filled in. So again, if the heart is not filled in, if it's just the outline, it's not in your favorites. If I click on it, then that will save that to my favorites. So as I mentioned, if I click on this icon here, I can share to any of these social media platforms. I can share it directly through email, or I can share it right to Google Classroom. I could copy the link as well. Let's say if I wanted to put this on a website for those who may be using Schoology, if I wanted to put that into Schoology as a link. But I can also then click here on Google Classroom and choose to share it with a particular class that I would want to share it with. So again, if it's a class that students are able to share with too, depending on the level of access they have, they could share that with the class as well. But as a teacher, what I could do is I can choose to create an assignment based on this resource. I can ask a question where maybe it's part of class participation discussion, or I can just add it as an announcement into my Google Classroom as well. Okay, and then I can click go. I won't actually post that here, but then it becomes a post right in your Google Classroom. Okay. So how do I access my favorites? So what I would do is I can click on Profile, either, again, at the top, where before I clicked on Explore or Nearby, or by clicking on my sandwich menu. Okay. I know it sounds like I'm ordering food, a sandwich menu. Kind of a strange term. Okay. So if I click on where it says profile in the upper right, it's going to bring me there. So the same thing, if I click on my sandwich in the upper left, I can click on my profile from there as well. Okay, so you can see that I have any of my favorites that are saved here in this tab, and then also galleries that I've created. So we'll talk about too, how you can create your own galleries. Okay, so to create your galleries, you have to make sure you're on the Galleries tab. And then in the lower right, you're going to see a plus. And then from there, you can click on as many of your favorited items as you want. And then click Continue to go to the next step. Okay, so again, from my profile, I'm going to click on the Galleries tab and then click on the plus. Okay, and so now in this step, I'm going to choose my items, and I can choose as many of my favorites as I want. Let's see. Okay, so let's say I'm going to choose a number of these here. So I've chosen several items, click Continue. So I can say, let's say water. Oh, sorry. Keep doing that. I have a couple of computers going on here right now. Water in art. Oops. Culture and history. Okay, so this will be then our next step after that, where I can put in a title and description. Now you can put in up to 800 words describing your collection. So again, if it's something thematic, you may need to explain why you included each of those items. So 800 words might seem like too much, or it might actually seem very limiting, depending on what you're doing. So I've seen some of the galleries, public galleries that are in here, where they actually have quite a long description because they are explaining why each of the items are in that collection. Okay, so again, in here, then I'm going to put my description. So, you know, how does water make you feel? We all need water. We are mostly made of water. And it has fascinated us for millennia. I could say for many years. Okay. Okay. So then I could say something else about that. Just because I'm not thinking very well off the top of my head right now, I won't write more right now. So this is something too that is important, and there used to be actually more controls than this. But at this point, if you want to share your gallery with anyone else other than yourself, you have to make it public. So it says visible to anyone with the link. It doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to feature it on Google Arts and Culture, or that other people are going to be able to find it that way. It just means that anyone with the link will be able to access it. So you can't only share it with certain people. And that I have in here as well. In order to share it, you first have to make it public. And again, if it's something where you're not ready yet, you can always keep it private, until you're ready to share with others, and then click Done in the upper right. So I'm going to click Done. Okay, and so now I have my gallery here. So what I can do is click on any of these thumbnails from my gallery. Okay, so now here are the options that I have for my gallery. Okay, so again, if I wanted to delete it, I could click the trash can. If I click on the pencil, I can edit it. So I can edit title description. I can add in or take out items from my gallery. This would be if I wanted to just copy a link to it. And again, the share icon allows me to share with those same social media platforms or share it right to Google Classroom. Okay, so if I go back here and I click on the pencil, this then allows me, if I want to, actually this one, it's no longer available. Okay, so I'm just going to, for here, click on this little minus in the upper right, and I'm going to take that item out of my collection. So you can see now that it's filled in with blue. That means it's ready to be taken out. Okay, and if I wanted to add more items, I could click on the plus that's here in the upper right. So then I could also add items. If I didn't want to, I could just kind of close out of it here. Okay, so again, if I wanted to, so go back to edit. Actually, let me go back here. Okay, so if I wanted to delete this, make sure I click. All right, put in my title description. I think I was clicking around too much. And make that public, and then I can click save again up here. Okay, so now if I click on the link icon, it copies that link to my clipboard, so then I can paste it into any resource. So if I'm going to share that on Schoology, on my classroom website, email it to somebody, it copies that link to my clipboard, ready to be pasted. And again, if I click on this icon right here, I can share it with these social media platforms, or I can share it right to my Google Classroom. The same way we could share any items that we saw in Google Arts and Culture. Okay. Let's refresh here to see if we have any other questions so far. Okay, so I did talk a lot about the mobile version. So again, if you wanted to do some of, especially those virtual reality features, where you can actually sort of move around a museum, instead of clicking and dragging, it feels more realistic as you're kind of walking. Just make sure you're not close to something that you could bump into if you're actually walking around and turning in that direction. And sometimes there are some nice three-dimensional features as well, depending on what the resource is. So again, once you have taken the quiz for this webinar, and we'll talk about that shortly, you will also have access to this presentation. And it has in here the links to the iOS app and the Android app. Okay, so again, some nice features of that that I've used before. You can, it's probably been talked about maybe about a year ago, quite a bit, is you can have the app take your picture and through facial recognition, try to match it to a work of art. Just kind of a fun way to maybe explore some new art. I am not convinced that Google is doing anything weird with your pictures. Some people think maybe it is. I don't think that's the case, hopefully not the case. Just kind of a fun way for you to experience the app and the artwork. An Android app, again, it's going to be very similar features. It just might look a little bit different on an Android device as opposed to an Apple iOS device. But all very similar. A nice feature that I haven't tried out yet, but that I want to try out is what's called Art Recognizer. And that's where if you're actually going to one of their partner museums, there are some works of art where you can actually hold your phone up, hold the camera up to the work of art, and it's going to say, you know, open this in the Arts and Culture app, and then it's going to give you some more information. So again, this is something where it's augmented reality, where you're looking at it through your camera, but then based on that recognition, it's giving you a richer experience when you actually go to a physical museum. I might actually, over the break, try that at the Albright Knox or someplace else that's close to me, or when we go to Toronto in about a month or so as well. Just don't tell my son yet. It's a Christmas gift. So again, I mentioned Google Cardboard before. So this is actually a VR device that you can either buy inexpensively or that you can make. Okay, and at the end of this webinar, I'll kind of show you how you would put your phone in there as well. And it's really amazing with just a little bit of cardboard, a little bit of Velcro, just a couple of magnets and some lenses, what you can do. Okay, so again, this is something that they've opened up to developers because they want people to use arts and culture, other resources that they have. They want other people to use Google Cardboard. So they've opened this up so anybody can have the plans to make you can start to develop virtual worlds in a number of platforms. So if you're someone who has a class or knows a class that works in programming, this might be something for them, depending on their platform that they would use. Or if you have a class that's into hands-on making through the maker movement, otherwise, Google has also released the templates for you to make your own Google Cardboard. The link that I have in here is actually a link to Instructables, which is a great site for makers. You sign up, you can download their instructions. It's free to sign up. So you can see this is somebody else's Google Cardboard that they made. A bit crude because they don't have a laser cutter. Who does, right? I don't have one in my house. But if you scroll down here, it kind of lays out what the pieces would look like. But you can certainly cut your own. It tells you the pieces that you would need. And this is the template. You would actually have to copy and paste this link into a new browser tab if you wanted to make your own Google Cardboard. But this is a template that you could print to make all the parts for your cardboard. And then it gives you the instructions there as well. So again, if it's something you're interested in making, this is the link from Instructables that you can use as well, which is, again, that's a great site for makers. Okay, so those are the end of our slides, but let me get back to our platform here. Maybe just have to log back in to sort of tell you what the next steps for this will be. Okay, so again, once you've watched the webinar and you've gotten here already because you're watching this, so good job. If I click back in my breadcrumbs here, back to the Google Arts and Culture topic, if you're watching the recording and you have questions, I would ask that you post them to this discussion topic here. So if I click on Google Arts and Culture, you can click Start a New Thread, and then you can ask your question. And I subscribe to notifications, so I log in on a daily basis. And if you have questions, I'll try to get back to those within a day or so of you asking the question. So the other part that you'll need, so if you are looking for a certificate for this webinar, proof that you have completed it, there is a webinar quiz. So this is actually in Google Forms. And you would need to enter a secret code. So the secret code that you need from the video is actually Cultural Institute, without any spaces. Okay, let me just kind of zoom in here. You can see that. Let me zoom in a little bit more. Okay, so you would put in Cultural Institute without any spaces, without any capitals, and then that would allow you to submit the quiz. So again, you need the secret code to submit, and of course, you need to put in your first and last name and email address as well. And so then the way it works is you can take the quiz as many times as you need. Once you get either 4 out of 5 or all 5 questions correct, then a certificate will be emailed directly to you. And again, if you take it and you get 3 or less questions correct, you can certainly go back and you can take this at any time, review the webinar, review the materials that then you'll have access to, and take that quiz again. Okay, so I'm just going to leave that. Okay, and then again, once you have submitted an attempt, in the email that you receive, you will also receive a link to the presentation from today as well. So those are the components of the webinar. Again, any questions that you have, you can certainly email me, but if you would like to ask them through the discussion, you can do that as well. If I click back on 1 hour webinars, this is where the rest of our Google webinars are going to be housed within this course. And you can see my contact email is here, mkovach@e1b.org. Or you can click on from this course in our online course platform, click on instructor contact at the top of the page. And then my contact info is in here as well. I am going to show you the VR device that is here. So this is, again, a Google Cardboard that I'm just going to put my phone into here. Okay. And then if I have various apps that I can run that are VR or videos, I can show them in here. I look forward to seeing you in future webinars. Thanks, and have a great day.